The year 1878 in Texas's hill country was one of blistering heat and profound tension. The Comanche, once masters of the southern plains, had long been in conflict with various tribes, including the Tonkawa, who resided in central Texas. It was a harsh, unforgiving landscape that fostered fierce competition for resources and power. The Comanche warriors, renowned for their horsemanship, battle tactics, and deep cultural codes of honor, had arrived in the region with a single goal in mind: to assert dominance and exact revenge for their fallen brothers. What unfolded next was a tale of violence, fury, and unimaginable retribution, a microcosm of the broader Native American conflicts of the time. The Tonkawa, once a powerful and relatively peaceful tribe, found themselves drawn into conflict with the Comanche, whose reputation for brutality preceded them. As the Comanche expanded their territories throughout the central and southern parts of what is now Texas, they came into frequent clashes with other tribes, particularly those like the Tonkawa, who had long-standing territorial claims. The Comanche expansion was driven by the desire to control the rich hunting grounds of the area and the necessity of maintaining their dominance over their rivals. The Tonkawa, though not as numerically strong as the Comanche, had their own warrior traditions. However, their warrior practices were markedly different. The Tonkawa were known for engaging in ritual cannibalism, a practice that often involved consuming the flesh of their enemies, particularly those whom they despised, such as the Comanche to the Tonkawa. Eating the flesh of a fallen adversary was not just a form of insult. It was a means of absorbing their enemies' strength and power. This gruesome ritual, known to strike fear in the hearts of many tribes, was seen by the Comanche as both barbaric and cowardly, and it fueled a deep personal animosity between the two groups. The Comanche, despite their fearsome reputation, were not immune to the psychological and emotional toll that such violence wrought. Their pride was their most cherished possession, and the Tonkawa's cannibalistic practices were viewed as an ultimate affront to their values and dignity. The Comanche warriors' desire for revenge was no longer solely about territorial disputes or resource control. It had become a matter of restoring their honor and avenging the brutal acts committed against their people. On a blistering, oppressive afternoon in 1878, the Comanche warriors set up camp near a creek in the Texas hill country. Their tents sprawled across the dry, cracked earth, offering little relief from the heat. The creek, though providing some water and shade, was not a haven but rather a temporary stopping point. The Comanche were not the type of people to settle in one place. For long, their nomadic lifestyle was one of survival, constantly moving from one location to another in search of buffalo game and resources. The day had begun like any other, with the warriors setting off on their hunts. A group of young braves eager to prove their worth had been tasked with the responsibility of finding game. The Comanche were skilled hunters, and the thrill of the chase was a fundamental part of their culture. For hours the young men ventured through the hills, using their keen senses to track herds of buffalo, their eyes scanning the horizon for signs of movement. However, their hunt took a dark turn. 3 of the 6 young braves never returned. When the remaining 3 appeared on the horizon, it was immediately apparent that something had gone horribly wrong. Their faces were grim, their eyes filled with dread. And as they approached the camp, they cried out the tragic news. Their comrades had been ambushed and killed by a band of approximately 30 Tonkawa warriors. The Comanche, filled with fury and disbelief, did not waste a moment in preparing for retaliation. The brutal murder of their young warriors was not just an attack on their people. It was an assault on their way of life. The scene in the Comanche camp quickly descended into chaos as the warriors scrambled to gather their weapons and prepare for battle. There was no hesitation, no time for grief or mourning, just the relentless, burning desire for revenge. Within minutes, the Comanche mounted their horses and set off, following the trail of the Tonkawa in hot pursuit. For hours the Comanche tracked the Tonkawa, riding at a breakneck pace. Their horses, built for endurance and speed, carried them swiftly over the rugged terrain. The Tonkawa, believing they had successfully outrun their pursuers, made camp in a ravine. It was here, beneath the shade of the rocks, that they felt a brief moment of reprieve. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, the Tonkawa gathered around their campfire, cooking a meal in preparation for the coming night. Little did they know that the Comanche were only a short distance away. As the Comanche crested a ridge, their sharp eyes spotted the Tonkawa below. Gathered in their camp, it was at that moment that silence descended on the scene. The two groups locked eyes from across the ravine, and for a brief moment the air was thick with tension. It was the calm before the storm, a fleeting moment of recognition before the chaos that would follow. The Comanche war chief, sensing the opportunity for a final decisive strike, gave a high-pitched war cry that shattered the stillness of the evening. At once the Comanche warriors descended into the ravine, riding swiftly into the heart of the Tonkawa camp. The initial moments of the battle were brutal, with the Comanche cutting down several Tonkawa warriors before the survivors could react. As the battle raged on, a Comanche warrior stumbled upon something that would fuel the fire of vengeance even further. Amid the chaos, he noticed the campfire still burning, with a meal cooking over the flames. Upon closer inspection, he recognized the meat roasting on the fire, a human leg the Tonkawa had been practicing their gruesome ritual of cannibalism, and the warrior immediately recognized the desecration for what it was. To the Comanche, this discovery was more than just a mere act of barbarism, it was a profound insult. The practice of cannibalism was seen not only as a violation of sacred warrior codes, but as an ultimate form of humiliation. The idea that the Tonkawa had used the flesh of their fallen comrades as a meal was more than they could bear. The rage that had simmered within the Comanche warriors now boiled over into a thirst for brutal retribution. No longer content to simply defeat their enemies, the Comanche were driven by an insatiable desire to exact vengeance. They mounted their horses once more, pursuing the remaining Tonkawa deeper into the ravine, their spirits alight with fury. The air was thick, with the sound of hooves pounding the earth, as the warriors raced towards the remnants of the Tonkawa in the depths of the ravine. The Tonkawa had prepared for the worst. They had fortified their position, hoping that their knowledge of the land would give them an advantage. As the Comanche charged, they faced a wall of resistance, with the Tonkawa warriors firing arrows and engaging in hand-to-hand combat. For a moment, it seemed that the Tonkawa might hold their ground. Then a lone Tonkawa brave rode out from the ravine, holding a shield high and challenging the Comanche to single combat. His bravery was unmatched, and he called for any warrior among the Comanche to face him. One Comanche, eager to prove his strength, charged forward but was cut down by the Tonkawa. Another followed, only to meet the same fate. The warriors around them began to whisper in awe. The Tonkawa had consumed human flesh, and the belief was that it had imbued him with extraordinary strength and courage. Finally, a third Comanche rode forward, determined to defeat the Tonkawa. Brave this time, the Comanche warrior succeeded in killing him, but the toll on both sides was immense. The battle continued, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. As the conflict reached its fever pitch, the remaining Tonkawa fought to the bitter end, but it was clear that their numbers were dwindling. The Comanche, fueled by rage and the desire for vengeance, pressed on, cutting down their enemies one by one. By the end of the day, the battle was over. The Comanche had emerged victorious, but the cost was staggering. 8 Comanche warriors lay dead, and between 40 and 50 more were badly wounded. It had been a hard-fought, costly victory, one that would leave scars on both sides. But for the Comanche, the victory was not enough to quell the rage and grief that consumed them. Herman Lemon, a member of the Comanche tribe, recalled the aftermath of the battle in vivid detail. He described the horrific scene that followed: the scalping of the dead, the amputation of limbs, and the grotesque act of throwing the bodies onto the fire. The ritualistic violence was a final, visceral expression of the Comanche warriors' fury and need for vengeance. The Tonkawa, already broken and beaten, were subjected to a final humiliating punishment. Those who were still alive, though dying, were thrown onto the flames, their bodies consumed by the fire. The Comanche danced around the fire, reveling in the grotesque spectacle, as they witnessed the bodies of their enemies crackle and pop in the heat. It was a moment of triumph, but also of profound sorrow, a victory achieved at an unimaginable cost. As the last remnants of the Tonkawa were reduced to ashes, the Comanche returned to their camp. But the mood was somber. The families of the slain warriors mourn deeply, their grief raw and palpable. The wives and children of the fallen warriors wept, cutting their bodies in traditional displays of mourning. The sounds of their cries filled the air, a stark contrast to the earlier triumph. This story is not merely one of military victory, but also a poignant reflection on the unrelenting cycle of violence that characterized intertribal conflicts during this era. The Comanche, though victorious, were left to contend with the psychological toll of the battle. The warriors who had once ridden with pride and honor now faced the emotional wreckage of their actions. The aftermath of the battle would resonate deeply within the Comanche community, as the grief and trauma of their losses began to settle in. The Tonkawa, too, were forever altered by this battle. The brutal loss of their warriors, the humiliation of their ritualistic practices being exposed, and the devastating defeat they suffered would haunt them for generations. For both tribes, this battle was not just a violent clash. It was a moment of profound change, one that would define the course of their histories. The battle between the Comanche and Tonkawa is but one example of the many intertribal conflicts that plagued Native American tribes during the late 19th century. These wars were often complex, driven not only by territorial disputes, but also by deeply ingrained cultural values, historical grievances, and the fight for survival in a rapidly changing world. The legacy of these conflicts is still felt today, as many Native American tribes continue to grapple with the scars of centuries of violence and colonization. In the end, the story of the Comanche and Tonkawa is not just one of bloodshed and brutality. It is a testament to the resilience, honor, and complexity of the tribes involved. Though both sides paid a heavy price, their stories remain a crucial part of understanding the broader history of Native American resistance and survival. The lessons learned from these dark chapters of history serve as reminders of the destructive power of revenge, the deep emotional costs of conflict, and the enduring strength of the human spirit.